All right, welcome to my talk, Becoming the Leader People Want to Follow, Leading with Humility and Emotional Intelligence by Ryan Groth, Chief Sales Officer at FollowUp Power. A little bit about me. I am an Oral Roberts University graduate back in 2009. Graduated from there, proud Golden Eagle. Led the team to conference championship in baseball, had an awesome team. I think we batted over 300 as a team. It was a great lineup, really loved it, and loved those days. Drafted by the MLB twice, and one was in junior college, and then one was out of Oral Roberts, and I ended up signing in 2008 with the Angels and finishing my degree in the off season. And I played 3 seasons of professional ball. In Utah, the Pioneer League, we played in Midwest League at Cedar Rapids, and I played some independent baseball after that. So then I transitioned down to South Florida and started to reinvent myself and started a career. And at this point, I've worked with hundreds of companies in their sales departments, definitely particularly in the construction industry. I'm currently on a vegan diet. Thought I'd share that. It's been about 4 weeks, and really feeling super good about my body, my health, and my mind. Everything's really clear, and I always say you can't knock something until you try it. So thought I would give it a whirl. My wife's really into it, and so far I'm embracing it and gone through the first few days of starvation, I felt like, after shutting down meat. But it's been going really well. So at this point, I've been married for about 6 years. That's my beautiful wife, Lindsay. Together we have 3 children. Asher William, he'll be 4 in this year in July, and Hunter Ryan, and Channing Victoria. And I'm also deacon at my local church, and love to do that on the side. So that's a little bit about me. Let's talk about what this is going to be about today. What's the agenda? So first is, why be a leader? I want to ask that question. I think got to start with why to really get to go somewhere in this talk. We really need to understand the motivation behind the why we want to lead. Second is, we can't do anything great alone. I want to talk about that and talk about the importance of effectiveness through people. Also, the 3 must-haves of leadership. It's going to be a really meaty part there of the time, along with how to skyrocket your leadership ability. If you want to do that, make sure you're keening in on that part of the talk. I'm going to be talking about my trip to California between Christmas and New Year's, and we're going to talk about next steps. So I'm excited to have you. So let's jump in, shall we? So why be a leader? Do you think having people on the org chart who report to you is a good motivation to be a leader? Like this guy, he's loves to have people report to him, makes him feel super good about himself, and have a good title. Is that something that you're looking to help you with your self-worth? Is have a cool title of director of sales and insecurity? At the end of the day, if you're feeling better about yourself because of your title, that's an indication that you need some room to grow. Definitely an area to improve there. So if that's you, make that be a character check. And is it to just make a lot of money? I mean, is leading just so you can make a lot of money a good motivation? And so you can be smoking your cigars, having your scotch. All those are nice things. But if we just want to have money at the end of the day, in and of ourselves, if that's the main motivation, then we're going to find ourselves having difficulty leading. And here's why. Here's some of the problems with these motives. If those are your motives, to have maybe a title or to just have some kind of just make more money, people are going to end up being a means to your end, right? So you'll find that you're stepping over, you're working not with people, but not through people, but you're working on top of people. You're stepping over people. You're working, and at the end of the day, you're going to be looking like this guy, which means you're going to have high turnover. People are going to leave you. Okay, people are going to feel that from you, as if that's the situation that you're currently functioning in, and long-term growth is going to be impossible. 50% of forecasted sales are lost due to sales force turnover. Having salespeople come and go, investing all that time, and them not working out, it's terrible. And let's just start with the motivation and make sure that's in check, because if that's part of your motivation, you're going to have serious issues, and there's just going to be such a ripple effect down the road because of that reputation that, he's all about the money, or, people don't stay long. Multiple things kind of occur, but you got to start with why, be a leader. And here's what leadership's about, according to John Baker, president of Ready Thinking, an organizational leadership development firm. He says this: leadership is accomplishing things that reach beyond solitary abilities by acting and getting others to act with a maturity that surpasses limited self-interest. So if you notice, I'm kind of snuffing out the self-interest, because if that's a big part of why you're in that role, then we're in trouble. We have to be able to have maturity that surpasses our own interest to ultimately lead, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. So we can't do anything great alone. Interdependence, according to Stephen Covey, is the highest level of effectiveness. So this right here on the right is a 7 habits of highly effective people graph, and this is a profound framework that he created here. And I want to talk about this first. The first 3 habits surround moving from dependence to independence. Like, for example, self-mastery. To the next 3 habits have to do with interdependence, working with others. Dependent people need others to get what they want, right? So you need others to be able to think of a baby. Think of a baby needs nurturing. Think of a new sales person needs a lot of nurturing, right? Independent people can get what they want through their own effort. All right, think you can go out and get it. You can go out and make enough money for what you need. You know how to you can go out and make things happen. But then there's a ceiling that happens there. There's a certain ceiling, and you're limited to your ability to be effective, which is ultimately to go to the next level, right? And so that's where interdependence comes in, and that's when they combine their own efforts, which could be great. You probably have a super high ceiling in and of yourself, but then it's a ceiling. It stops. So working that together through the effort of others to achieve the greatest success is where it's at. So interdependence, realizing that, listen, like, your ability to be the team player or the player coach and still bring in almost all the sales, and then have other people not really achieving that much, is a problem. You're finding yourself not be able to work through yourself and get other people to really produce at a high level. It's still on you. And if that's where we want to kind of break out of, let's go to the next level here. So he also talks about in this book, which is really profound. He says character ethic versus personality ethic. He says that character ethic is the idea that a person advances in basis of their character. So this is actually culturally the main idea expressed in World War I in the U.S. prior to World War I, when popular literature began to eventually focus more on shortcuts, easy ways to manipulate situations or to get what they want. So they started teaching personality versus character, but prior to, we're talking like Benjamin Franklin days, like back in those days, those guys are about character. They felt like that was the main foundation that needs to be in you, in a person, to grow, to be effective. And so you're talking about interdependence, and now we're talking about character. We're talking about personality. And so it's like, is it just being a good guy, closing the deal, creating some, I think, artificial fluff, I think, is what the personality ethic is all about, versus a character ethic, which is long-lasting, long-standing, profound results, and therefore moving into interdependence. So character is where I want to lead, start to lead this next component here, which is the 3 must-haves of leadership. And this is a personal journey that I took as I actually got introduced to this book. This book started like something else. It awakened something in me. It helped me think, man, let me take some inventory of my own character. Let's find out what's going on the inside, because there is a ceiling occurring, right? And what happened here is, when I read this book, this is a great book, by the way. I mean, you got to get this. It's in the construction industry. Patrick Lencioni is well recognized as a consultant, leadership guy, thought leader. He speaks at a lot of conferences. And this book is actually about, it's a fable about a construction company, and the owner having a relative who was a guy out of Silicon Valley who worked in technology, but he was a little bit north in California, and they started to really connect, and they kind of worked together a little bit, and then eventually it was an uncle-nephew relationship. He ended up joining him, started working with him, really enjoying the time, and then he takes him to breakfast and says, "Hey, I got news for you. I got to stop working." And so the uncle, or the nephew rather, had to just, it was like, "What do you mean? Like, you got to start working?" He goes, I want you to take over the company." And then he goes, "What? You want me to take over the company?" And he goes, "I'm not ready for that. I don't even know that much about construction." He's like, "Well, you know about business and leadership and, team building." And so it like really starts to progress into a slippery slope where he says, "Well, we've got two of the biggest jobs we've ever signed up with, and we got them under contract, and we actually needed the money the money from the down payment to support and supplement the other projects that we're currently working on." And so he goes, "Wait, now we got cash flow issues." So what happened was they basically took on the biggest job. Both of them individually were the biggest jobs they've ever taken, but they had two at the same time. So they had a lot of capacity constraints, and so he's like, the doctor said he can't even be in the office. It's just stress level is going to, make him, have a lot of issues. So what they did was they came up with, in this fable, the virtues that they wanted to look for in the ideal team player, because the other people that were going to work with the nephew are like, "Oh man, no, just we lose a lot of people, a lot of churn with our project managers. It's just part of the business." And the guy's like, "No way, like that shouldn't be the case." And so what happened was he ended up saying, "What do we need to look for in finding the right kind of person?" And so they went on this journey, and the book is just awesome. It's really easy to read. It's really engaging. It's funny. And they came up with these three character virtues. These are the three must-haves of leadership. And I want to call this the ideal team player. This is what this book is about. And so first one is hungry. Ideal team players are hungry. Okay, they're always looking for more. They came up and said, they got to be hungry. The more things to do, more to learn, more responsibility to take on. Hungry people almost never have to be pushed by a manager to work harder because they are self-motivated and diligent. They're constantly thinking about the next step and the next opportunity. So that was, that was the first step. We got to find somebody who just is hungry, right? And so they also look for the next step, which was humility, having to be humble. So ideal team players are humble. They lack excessive ego or concerns about status. Humble people are quick to point out the contributions of others and slow to seek attention for their own. They share credit, emphasize team over self, and define success collectively rather than individually. So they're like, man, we got to have guys who are hungry and then humble, right? So we're like, we don't want guys that are jackasses. Actually, they talked about having a shirt that says, the first starting point is we don't want them to be a jackass. Okay, don't be a jackass. That's the starting point. And so they're like, well, that can't be the definition. What does not being a jackass look like? And so hungry, humble, and then the last one was smart. And they made a point. They said, it's not really IQ smart. It's more like EQ, but simpler. So they said they just got to have a common sense about people. Smart people tend to know what is happening in a group situation, how to deal with others in the most effective of ways. They have good judgment and intuition about the subtleties of the group dynamics and the impact of their words and actions. So people who are, I think this is like awareness, right? People who are just aware, people who have awareness and they're smart, and they're clued in. So they said this, it's like emotional intelligence, but simpler. So this is what the ideal team player looks like in summary. And so I had to ask myself, am I an ideal team player? I started taking inventory of my own character. So I thought of myself, hungry. Am I hungry? Definitely. I'm hungry. I love to grow. I love to find out ways to succeed. I love to work. I love to get in early, staying late. And I was just, I'm a hungry guy. So I said, yeah, check that box. Humble? Well, I could say it needs improvement. I think humility has been something that has been on my mind for some time. And, and I just felt, okay. Actually, there's a story of there's like this little proverb that I read a few years ago. It says the desires, the sluggard craves and gets nothing, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. So I thought to myself, if I'm just diligent, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to get what I want in life. And so that's where the hungry started to tap in. I started to really work hard. And humble, I was always thinking about, you got to think of others better than yourselves. Um, and so humility started to become a factor of, I knew I needed to grow, but then I started to really look into it, and I said, man, I think I need improvement. And then the smart part, I asked myself that question, and after taking inventory, I said, man, double face palm. That is not something I'm strong in right now. I did not develop that character virtue. So these three must-haves, I felt myself getting on the downward trajectory here as I progressed through this book. And in fact, this ideal team player, they show a graph of if you were one only virtue or two of the three and what those descriptors would look like. And so here, I found myself saying, okay, I'm hungry and I'm humble. I'm an accidental mess maker. I don't do it on purpose. I don't, but I find myself, I don't think anybody does anything on purpose, but I find myself just making messes on accident. It's like, gosh, I got to improve, right? I got to get better in a lot of areas. So you can see if somebody is hungry alone, they're a bulldozer. If they're humble by themselves, they're a doormat. If they're smart alone, they're a charmer. Then you blend in hungry and smart, you got the skillful politician. Then you got humble and smart, you got the lovable slacker. And then you got humble and hungry, you got the accidental mess maker. But if they have all those virtues together, they're the ideal team player. So I thought, man, I'm that guy. I'm an accidental mess maker right now. And so it kind of takes me back to the difference between like salespeople and real leaders, because some mistakes that people make is they take their best salesperson and make him a sales manager, or they take their best manager and make him even higher ranking leader. And what we find is um, you know that you can sniff this out early. You can really avoid a lot of damage because if a salesperson is a salesperson with a sales manager, then they're just going to be like they're just going to be let me explain right here. Most of us begin as a salesperson. Salespeople are typically hungry, so they're bulldozers. They know how to make things happen. They can run through a brick wall. They'll probably run through a brick wall to get it, although they could probably open the door around the back, if they knew that it was there. But they didn't really have time because they're just hungry and they want to get it done, right? Or they're accidental mess makers, which is me. They find themselves saying, "Oh crap, I think I messed up something. Didn't do it on purpose though. Sorry." All right, and so you got that, and then you got salespeople, like I mentioned in the independent, dependent, interdependent. They're most of the time either dependent or independent. They know how to make that happen. So salespeople are typically out for their own short-term gain. They're not necessarily long-term thinkers. So there's definitely a difference between salespeople and leaders. Not always, the same, right? So the ideal team player, that's going to be that all-star salesperson. Those could be your potentially all-star team players that want to lead and you can lean on. So it's something to be paying attention to there. Do they have those three virtues: humble, hungry, and smart? And if they are, then that's you got Steph Curry with Draymond Green, and those guys are just awesome. Definitely not an all-star. It's not a one guy star there on that team. And so I looked at hungry. We checked that box. We all are there, right? Humility. So I looked at humility. Let's look at this for a minute. Humility is the most important character virtue of them all. I had to ask myself, am I a humble person? And that's defined in this. It's not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. That is one of the most profound definitions ever, because sometimes humility can be looked upon as almost like false humility, where you like grovel and you try to. It's like it's like you put yourself, just like modesty. Someone says you're doing great. You're like, oh, I'm not that great. And instead humility says, oh, thanks. How about you? Let's talk about you right now, right? So that's what humility is, and I think the other is that false humility, where you want to kind of almost put yourself down. You're basically it's the opposite. You're fishing for compliments, and that's not what true humility is. True humility knows who they are, but they're not about them. So, which is great. So I began making a habit of thinking about others first and serving people. And I asked myself, what percentage of my time is consumed with myself or others, or others? And the more I thought of it, the more I became aware of others versus myself and how I impacted them. And I became more focused on serving others and began to see progress in ways I've never seen at home, with team people, or with people at work, with people, with clients, people at my church, whatever the situation is. I found myself being a lot more others-centric, and that started becoming a game changer. And that's where I think the SMART starts to really come into play, where it says, SMART's emotional intelligence, but simpler. Yeah, okay, well, maybe that's a doorway for me to look into what that is. And so I thought to myself, what is it? So I went and bought the book, and this book started it really just set me on another level of like skyrocketing this whole journey, where I was kind of on the airplane, and now I'm going, now I'm going really high. And so I bought the book, and I couldn't believe how good it was. It just really started to shape some thought that was much needed and needed to be addressed in my development. And so I had this book here, and I got the definition. It's capacity to be aware of, control, and express one's emotions, and to handle interpersonal relationships judiciously and empathetically. So you have it's like the brain and the heart equals the EQ. It's your mind and your feelings. It's kind of integrating all that together, and starting to lead and make decisions that way. Emotional intelligence is the key to both personal and professional success. So when I got into the book, they did a research of 500,000 people over the last decade, and there's a massive global deficit. Only 36% of people are able to identify their emotions as they happen. Most people are totally clueless and totally unaware of themselves and the ripple effect around them. So other cases for why you need to improve your EQ, studies show that 90% of top performers have high EQ, but just 20% of low performers have high EQ, which is powerful, right? It's not saying IQ is what makes you successful, it's EQ. 90% of top performers have high EQ. 20% of companies are now measuring EQ in their hiring process. So now they're paying attention to that before they even bring it in. They're looking. It's going to become more commonplace for people to start to think, is this person emotionally intelligent, before they come on board. For every point of EQ is $1,300 added to your additional salary. It's what they found in their research. EQ is responsible for 58% of your job performance. That's so powerful, right? It's your ability to interact and to manage that entire ecosystem of your workday. People with high EQ typically make $29,000 more annually than their low EQ counterparts. So EQ is a game changer. This really starts to take it to the next level. And so IQ, we talked about that shortly. I mean, that's that has been such a measurement for so long. But we're born with a certain like capacity there, right? But EQ, it can be developed, right? You got these guys with working out. You can work out muscles, just like EQ, just like muscles. EQ is something you can develop over time, and as your EQ skills grow, you'll learn to spot your triggers and practice productive ways of responding that will become habitual. So EQ broken down, there's two major focuses. One is personal competence, which is your relationship with yourself, and the other is social competence, your relationship with others. And the four total is self-awareness. So A, how in tune are you with your emotions? Are you aware of your own emotions? Next, self-management, your ability to regulate your emotional state. So I'm really frustrated, but can I regulate that? Can I bring that down? I'm really confused right now. Am I aware of that? Can I regulate that? Social competence, your relationship with others. So social awareness is, how in tune are you with others' emotions? Are you so in your own world that you can't see what's going around you? And then relationship management is how your ability is to navigate emotions and interactions with others. So now you're interacting. Can you do that regulation of yourself amidst a group, amidst the dialogue? Then you start to think, wow, like this is crazy. So when I got this done, and actually there's a test that comes with this book, I found that self-awareness was my very lowest score. And this is the area that I wanted to address. And as I began addressing it, the book actually has, over here, they have examples of what self-awareness really looks like. So this is one I want to read off. Came right out of the book, page 28. So Dave T., Regional Service Manager, self-awareness score 95. So what people who work with him say, Dave has clear long-term goals and he doesn't make sacrifices for short-term gains. Dave is an upfront kind of guy who doesn't play mind games with people. I have witnessed this at company meetings and in meetings with customers. The best example I can provide for Dave is his move to our company. I'm sure that there was an intense desire to make changes within the local team right out of the gate, but Dave took extra care to diagnose the situation, the team, and the customer prior to offering suggestions or mandates for change. In short, Dave manages his emotions, they don't manage him. I've seen him accept difficult business news with a brief frown, and then he quickly moves on beyond that and partners with his team to find solutions to improve the situation. So this is Dave, just calm, cool, unflappable. The guy just gets it done. He doesn't let the emotions shake him up. So when I read that, there was an example after that of what a lack of self-awareness looks like. And this is what really started to shake me up. Giles B., Operations Director, self-awareness score 67. What people who work with him say is that Giles is very much in his own little world. He obviously does care about his coworkers, but he doesn't seem to know where to draw a line. His personality can be overwhelming, but he doesn't notice when the other person is feeling annoyed, frustrated, or overwhelmed by him. When working with customers, he is very good at talking about the products and services we offer. On group projects, sometimes he gets so focused on the outcome, the process is missed. If you were able to just take a moment and let all those emotions settle, and then look at the options to reach a desired outcome, things would definitely go more smoothly. Giles is passionate about what he does. Sometimes that passion gets in the way. He might not notice that some people are busy with something else before he jumps in and starts talking to me. When he's excited, he talks over you, and it is hard to get a word in edgewise. He doesn't mean to. He's just excited about what he does. So that's the example, and then they actually have examples of self-management, social awareness, and relationship management all in there of what it looks like, what it doesn't look like. So I started to really dive in and say, what is it that's in me that I need to work on, and that's what I started to do, and I'll show you how I did that in a little bit. But first, I want to talk about different leaders that have high EQ scores. So some of the highest EQ scores in the world are people who are leading. John Donahoe from eBay. Donahoe inherited a difficult situation from Meg Whitman with the need to truly alter a company's business strategy. As a role model for Jim Collins, if you guys ever heard of that, that book, Jim Collins, that he wrote, he talks about level 5 leadership, good to great, humility and ambition, and Bill George's True North Leaders, Donahoe's disciplined self-awareness, and his listening ability to have created a deeply loyal team and a healthy evolving culture. So John's an example of doing huge things. Howard Schultz, Starbucks, he says that the main reason he came back was love for the people and the company. He dedicated generous healthcare benefits inspired by his father losing health insurance when Schultz was a kid. So he's super other-centric. He's focusing on everyone else, developing everyone around him, which is really cool, obviously. And you hear stories of people at Starbucks who are kind of the down and outs, and they feel like they have a future there. They feel like they're taken care of there, which creates a tremendous amount of loyalty. And their training is amazing. Kent Theory, DeVita. Leaders with high EI or EQ create culture-driven organizations that perform at their peak due to the power of the mission and teamwork. Theory took over a demoralized kidney dialysis center company that was almost out of business, and with passionate spirit created a nearly 44% annual growth in earnings per share in the past decade, 6th highest of any Fortune 500 company. Very, very impressive. Alan Mulally, Ford. Walk around Ford's corporate campus and you will see office cubes featuring handwritten notes that Mulally has sent to his employees praising their work. Great interpersonal skills and a Clinton-esque ability to make you feel like you're the only one in the room when you have a conversation with him. So you look at these guys. There's two more. Jeff Bezos, Amazon.com. With his quirky laugh and self-deprecating style, Bezos doesn't sound like a Fortune 500 CEO, and that's probably to his benefit. His obsession with the hearts and minds of his customers and his long-term perspective on relationships are legendary, as was his YouTube announcement back in 2009. Lastly, Warren Buffett, Mr. Legend of them all, Berkshire Hathaway. Success is in investing doesn't correlate with IQ once you're above the level of 25. Check this out. Once you have ordinary intelligence, what you need is the temperament to control the urges that get other people into trouble investing. Intensely loyal and relationship driven, he asks his CEOs to run their companies as if they were if they were to own them 100 years from now. So what a cool few examples, 6 examples of leaders with extremely high EQ scores that are clearly see the power of interdependence and working through others and their ability to make others feel really amazing. So strategies to improve your EQ scores that I jumped in and developed, or that I started developing when I read the book. My favorite self-awareness strategies are to observe the ripple effect from your emotions and to watch yourself like a hawk. So I found myself realizing that when I was frustrated, there was a massive ripple effect in my house, with my employees, with my clients, and the opposite, the excitement, the joy was eminent. Excuse me. Watch yourself like a hawk. Simulate that you're up in the sky looking at yourself. What would you think about yourself? What would you say to yourself? I think they say in school, who cares what other people think? People would say that, and I think that's a problem. I think you need to really care what other people think, because if you're not paying attention, what it does is you don't pay attention to that, and that you then begin to just not. It's a difference between standing for something and then not caring what other people think, where then you're just so self-minded. So watching yourself like a hawk is really great. Next, for self-management strategies, put a mental recharge in your schedule. Sometimes we hit the gas and we just got the foot on the gas, and then the oil starts popping, and you start heating up. Take control of your self-talk. Don't call yourself an idiot. Don't call yourself a dummy. Don't talk bad to yourself. You're hurting yourself. It's not working because you're believing that's coming out of your mouth. It's not good. Favorite social awareness strategies: greet people by name. Watch EQ at the movies. Go to the movies and say, what about that guy? What about that guy? Is he aware? Is he paying attention? What's his EQ score? What would we guess it would be? And favorite relationship management strategies: building trust. Avoid giving mixed signals. Find yourself aware of what you're about to do, how you're saying it, how that's going to come across, regulating that, and then start to filter it through what would most benefit that person, right? So those are hugely important strategies. Speaking of recharge in your schedule, last year my family and I took them up to California, and we went from LA in a camper van. That right there, it was a 15-passenger van. We converted it into a bed, and we stayed for 2 weeks, about half the time in the van, other times we're with friends or in a hotel. And it was just a really fun trip. It was memorable for us all. Was really great recharge for me emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and relationally with my family. It was just such a special time. And if any of you guys ever done it, I'd highly encourage you to do it. And when I was out there, I was able to break away and just think, man, this character development, this leadership development, this growth, these growing pains, these growing opportunities that I'm experiencing, I need to recalibrate and to just kind of get centered before I launch into 2017. And I'm really glad I did that. It's been such a great year so far. But what I did when I was there, when I put that mental recharge, was I set out character virtue goals. So I started to think, based on what I learned about myself, based on me just taking inventory of my humble, hungry, smart framework, my interpersonal development, my emotional intelligence. What is it that I want to do? So I just kind of put them all into one goal, and I do so. I look at this every week, and I just kind of ask myself, am I being emotionally aware of myself and others? Am I speaking the truth in love? Do I trust others? Am I trusting others around me? Am I speaking the truth in frustration or in love, right? Am I unflappable? So unflappable is that nothing freaks me out. You can't jolt me, I had a crazy, like, emotional earthquake that happened, last year that really shook me up, to kind of got me to say, oh, dang, like, there's something going on here. And what it was my little boy. It was my son, Hunter. He was 1 year old. It was about a year ago. He just turned 2, and I was just like mismanaging everything going on. My wife was in the bank, and I'm sorry to end it on this note here, but my wife was at the bank, and I was handling the boys by myself, and I just got a little caught up with just all the stuff hitting me left and right with work, and we have a pool in the back, and I answered an email real quick, got off the phone for just a very short time, but then I see my son in the deep end floating, and that experience really shook me. I obviously, just completely freaked out and got up, and was running through the house to come to the front, and the lawnmower was going on with the lawn guy. People couldn't hear me. I was screaming at the top of my lungs, and I ended up, just thankfully being able to give him mouth-to-mouth myself, and he got all the water out. But it was very scary. Went to the ER. Everything was fine. No brain damage or anything. And that was just like such a scare, for me. And it just took a massive, it was like putting electrical shock on my emotions, and it just shook me to the core, and kind of woke me up, and began this journey of growth. And sometimes, painful things have to happen for us to grow. But thankfully, I look at him every day, and if we're at the pool, we're hanging out, which we have, a big gate now, and I just I'm so thankful. I'm just so thankful that it is what it was. But that was quite the PTSD, for a minute. And I would say that being unflappable has to be the case. We have to be that with everything, whether it's bad business news, or a client left, or we got to, being able to have awareness and regulation. Being patient with people, but impatient with average results. Having an appetite for just having an appetite for great results, but then not being impatient with people in the process, because we could really hurt what we've invested. And then if we were to make that decision to let them go, we can do that in a cordial way. Quality and quantity time with family and loved ones. Make big people. Individual success stories. I got this from some a conference that I was at last year, 2 years ago, and what they talked about was building, like, instead of delegating to somebody and saying, here, do this task or something, think about making that person the largest, most successful version of themselves that they could be. So going into, I want to make this person the biggest version of themselves under my covering and leadership that I could possibly can. So I start to think of that's different than delegating and task assigning. This is, do this job description. This is, I want to develop you. And so that changes to everything right there. Own every choice. Greg told me this, underperformers always blame others, and I love that. When you find somebody blaming everybody else in something, that's an underperformer screaming at you right there. Be as bold as a lion. Cheetahs scramble, but lions don't. My wife had a dream about me being a lion and not a cheetah. And I just thought I would never forget that, and I always kind of keep that in mind. Last year is when she had this dream. And cheetahs go quick, right? But lions don't. They just stand there and say, what? They roar at you, or they fall asleep, and they're like, nothing's going to go down here. We got this. Be the very best servant, counselor, advisor to my industry employees I can be. I'm the victor, never the victim. Remain humble and tender-hearted, never thinking less of myself, but thinking of myself less often. And being teachable in every season. So these are my character virtue goals. So as we kind of land this and finish this out here, next steps for you would buy and read the books. The Ideal Team Player by Patrick Lencioni, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey, and Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Travis Bradberry and Gene Greaves. Amazing series of books right there. I mean, that's timeless. Take the test and EQ test, form new habits, serve more people, and skyrocket your leadership ability. And lastly, make a note to get away and take inventory of your own character. Write out your own character virtue goals. This right here is going to change everything, hopefully for you and for those under your leadership in the organization. These are some of my journey, but some of the next steps that I encourage you guys to take as you're embracing. Not follow-up power is just it's a tool, right? But at the end of the day, it's a tool to do something great. And if we forget that there's people in that software, there's people in there that we're developing and managing and tracking, then we're not going to coach them right. So hopefully this gives you a frame of reference, a framework to kind of back into to think how you can really just grow as a leader and be somebody that everybody would want to follow. So thank you.